What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Apex presented by RockShock. I'm sitting with the Trail Whisperer, Daniel Matheny. I know he loves it when I call him that. And then I'm sitting with another local legend, Bryan Peck, who's so nice enough to mute himself in the Denver airport where everybody loves to be on a, what is it, Friday? Yeah, we're recording this on a Friday. So anyways, yeah, how are you enjoying being in the airport right now? Are we hearing that baggage claims coming through or anything? So he's going to
It's
be
not too bad. I got where I could be as quiet as possible, so we're going to do the best we can.
quiet as possible. Yeah, this will make for a funny video because it's like he's going to be muted and he'll probably have people like gate agents walking up and be like, "Man, get on the plane, get on the plane." But Daniel, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well.
Yeah. So this podcast is going to be awesome. I'm really excited about this podcast. This podcast has been in the making for quite some time. The guys will be giggling behind their computers because they know that we've been trying to get this thing rolling for quite some time. There's been some chaos with people's schedules with Leadville and Breck Epic, as well as trying to get a plan with some of these stages. And we got some new stages that we're going to talk about here in a second. But I want to start with you, Matheny, because we know Bryan. Bryan's been on the podcast already. But yeah, I've made mention of you. I've made light of you. A lot of people do know you that listen to the podcast, but I've actually been getting messages from people that have never been to the Apex. And, so they probably don't know you. So yeah, give us a little bit of a breakdown. There's 2 national championship jerseys behind you. So you've obviously got some sort of pedigree, and I keep calling you the Trail Whisperer. So and last time I saw you, you were popping around on a pump track. So let's hear a little bit about you, man.
Yeah, so been all things bike for a long time. Yeah, these are something I've had hanging in my closet for a while, for 24-hour and marathon national. And some people thought, since I coach and I do this for a living, I should probably display them instead of leave them hanging somewhere. So but in this regards, I'm the course director for the Pikes Peak APEX, and Micah came to me before the first iteration, which is going on its 3rd year now, and approached me with it. And I was like, this is awesome. When I moved to town, it was one of those things where it was kind of a secret society of who you knew to find where the trails connected, and not a lot of connections or trail markings. And so I wanted to be somewhat trying to welcome people in, because I feel like it was kind of like our road group ride. It's like show up and who's the new guy and scowl at them or something like that, versus welcome them into the mix. And it's gotten better. So when I got kind of that option to join this crew, with Apex being a contractor, of course, I was like, yeah, I'd love to show off what we have here in the Pikes Peak region, for a stage race. I've done a lot of those with, say, like Breck Epic or other places, and just wanted to see if we could do that here. And being a mountain biker, I kind of call myself like the course director for the rider, because I'm still out there day in and day out. Love it. It's my outlet. I coach kids in high school. Like you saw me the other day, I think I had my 3-year-old and 6-year-old sending it down the pump track, riding off the launch ramp there where they enjoy themselves. So it's like we do it as a family.
Yeah, which if you're coming to visit, like it's right off Mark Dabbling, you got to go check it out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's pretty impressive to watch a 3-year-old on a balance bike go from like the launch ramp that's 10 or 15 feet above everything, and just, well, I'm going to go for it. No brakes.
Yeah. So, and at that point, you're probably starting to count down the years where he will surpass you as a, as a mountain biker. And so then he becomes the new Trail Whisperer. But Bryan, for the guys and girls that missed the last podcast, give us a brief breakdown of who you are and what you do, and how you kind of find yourself falling in on this podcast once again.
Yeah, happy to, John. No, moved to Colorado about 3 years ago, got involved in the mountain biking scene there in Colorado Springs. Did a lot of road racing when I was much younger, but kind of hung the bike up for about 25 years. Rediscovered the mountain bike here, and have just been having a blast. Got plugged into the Apex, got plugged into some coaching with Daniel, and just having a blast, kind of reigniting some of those competitive juices from a long time ago. So all good.
So you had the practical inside scoop. Like you literally hired the Trail Whisperer to coach you for this. So you're like one step ahead of everyone. Is that kind of like cheating? Would you call yourself the Lance Armstrong right now of the Apex?
No, I would not call myself that, but I will tell you, I would not call myself. I did race with Lance several times back
Really?
In the Texas area, and I quickly learned that this 18-year-old kid was pretty good, and I was not so good. So, but no, yeah, Daniel's been a tremendous help for me, especially just really getting disciplined about my training, and I'm looking forward to getting home tonight and headed to Canyon City tomorrow morning for a good long ride on the route there. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, and we're about to dive into, because that's one of the new stages that we were talking about earlier, and we're going to dive into that here in a second. But I kind of want to break down the schedule of events for everyone. I mean, this is like action packed. It all starts, on September 22nd, and you can do anything from riding, one stage to even riding, all four. But we got events starting on Monday with pre-ride meeting, and as well as there's the women's mountain bike clinic as well on Wednesday or on Tuesday. Then Wednesday we got a welcome reception, which is put on by the Sports Medicine Center, which is really cool. Have you been there yet, Matheny?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I've actually went up there for a study and been part of their lab. So yeah.
I don't want to jinx it, but it's probably the cheapest O2 testing that you can get. Like, you can literally go in there, and I think it's like $20 a session, and you can get some O2 chamber time, which for us,
I did not know that.
Oh man, like I think it was like $144 for 8 sessions in the O2 room. So you can come down to sea level and train with some oxygen, which is a good time. So yeah, if you haven't checked out the Highball Center yet in Colorado Springs, it's super, super cool. But yeah, so the events, let's go ahead and dive into stage one, the famous Palmer Park stage. And so what do we have to expect for this stage, Matheny?
It's a good mix of what Colorado Springs City Park has to offer, and everything around this region for mountain bikers, everything's a little bit different. But Palmer Park is notoriously known for like the punchiness, and it's kind of what I call a plateau in the middle of town on sandstone. So it's like if you're on top of that plateau and you drop down, there's some fun descent action. But if you get on the bottom, you've got to work your way back up over some of that stuff. And so we've maximized the acreage there at this, within City Park to have a really solid 11.6 mile loop. And there's not a ton of climbing relative to the other stuff, like just under 1,000 feet or right at for the loop. But you earn it.
927. It's 927 feet for my big butt, dude. Like, that's climbing. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. within an 11-mile loop, and it's not just easy up and down. So there's some technical spots in there. But the way I put that thing together was, this jersey was from Palmer Park when they had 24-hour nationals there. And I remember some people, like when that course was put together, and I was friends with the guy that helped promote it, people like shied away and were like, oh my gosh, we're running, like, we don't want to race that for 24 hours. And it's like, it's in our backyard. So we had the home turf advantage. And that's kind of the way I took it with designing this course, was sprinkle some of the technical pieces like the Black Diamond trails in there, but then also jump out onto the regional pass and, allow somebody to take a breather, grab a drink, and then get back to it. And so it's a good mix of that, I would say, of using most of the park, but we utilize some of the roads, some of the open regional path areas, things like that, and then dive into even sections that are known for like being a little Moab, and there's not really a line through there per se as like single track. So last year I remember marking it with chalk and stuff like that, so you could actually know where you're going.
Would you say that Palmer Park is like one of the hardest parks? Like, you got Ute and some of these other places, but wouldn't you say that's probably one of the hardest parks to ride your mountain bike though?
Yeah, it's kind of like what they joke about in the mountain bike world, like Moab miles or Sedona miles. It's like there's so many of the rocks that impede your speed that it doesn't come easy. So for every mile in there, it feels like you're at road 2. So yeah, it's not. I wouldn't want to downplay it. It's super fun, but it is one of those that is a challenging ride to go fast on.
Yeah, so it's pretty technical, but
yeah.
So Bryan, coming from the athlete, what is your warm up going to look like for a stage like this? It's short, but you got to get warm. I mean, because it's going to be a fast one. It's going to be over before you know it.
Yeah, since last year, I really didn't have a clue on my warm up, and I did my best to get the legs warm a little bit. But the first climb at Palmer Park requires a solid warm up. And actually, Daniel's, been putting me through some specific warm ups for some specific races that I've done this year. So I'm looking forward to being much more tuned up and ready for that. But it punches you really hard at the very beginning. And if you can weather that first 10, 15 minutes, some stair steps up, it is so much fun because, as Daniel said, it's an incredible mix of fun and technical. And Little Moab is a great spectator spot. It's always fun to hear the bells and hear everybody cheering as you're getting close to the finish in that area. So it's a great stage. It's probably one of the stages I'm most looking forward to this year.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, it sets the race up, it sets the race up, sets everybody up for their times, etc. But then we move on to day two. So we move on to day two. And I think this is what you were talking about earlier. It's kind of nice that we have a stage that's, their miles don't necessarily meet the climbing. And, it's really easily done here in Colorado Springs. You can go ride 10 miles and get 1,000 feet of climbing in the matter of seconds. Well, depending on how fast you want to ride it. But more or less, we're looking at a canyon city, which is it's right outside of the Springs. But we're looking at 35 miles, around about 36 miles, about 3,800 feet of climbing, and this is a new one. Never been raced. And so where did this design come from? Where did the organization come from, Matheny? Like, this is exciting because I think it's really cool to like integrate Canyon City into the Apex, because a lot of us guys, when it gets kind of cold up here, for some reason Canyon City can turn into our Arizona just for a little bit. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it just happens to be 10 degrees warmer and it makes a difference.
Yeah, and a bunch of people go down that way in the winter, even like Front Range. Like here, it's quick. It's like an hour or less to get down to Pueblo or Canyon City, and it's definitely more high desert than here, and that's probably what I'd characterize that course as. As far as how it got open, it was one of those things that kind of came upon us because in this whole courting process of courses, there's different, private properties, Forest Service, BLM, all the different things when it comes to permitting all these courses that a lot of people don't understand that you run into. So we basically have been drumming hard the last 3 years to get anything and everything at our fingertips, to have accessibility to see what we can produce as the best Pikes Peak APEX. And frankly, when this was brought to the table and Mike and I started talking about it, I was like, man, I don't know. Canyon City is not really what I would consider here. People may not want to drive down there, whatever. And then we went and checked it out, and it was like, this could be a really cool stage. And, it's really shaped up to be just that, because there was a new trail built called the Royal Cascade, which climbs out of Tunnel Road, which is, from the previous participants here, we have Gold Camp, which is like a railroad grade with tunnels that we've used in the past. And that's similar to the way this one starts. But the climb from Tunnel Road then climbs up to Fremont Peak, which is a high point, and it is not to scare people, but it's like what I would consider like death by switchbacks, and it's native to bighorn sheep territory. So they closed it the entire month of June and July for bighorn sheep mating, and we rode it this spring, and it is just a lot of switchbacks all the way up to the top. And so it's going to be a big front-loaded climb. But then the cool thing we get to do is race over to the Royal Gorge area, and actually we have permission to race across the gorge on the bridge into some private land on the other side and make a full loop out of this thing that you can't do normally. So the draw of that stage and doing that is really cool.
No, that's insane. And I'm looking at the profile now, in which, like, you guys can go check out the profile at the pikespeakapex.com. All you need to do is go to About, and they have a list of the stages, all that good stuff. But I'm looking at the profile now, and it looks like it, like you said, it's front loaded climbing on the way out. It's about, it's pretty flat. And then around mile 3-ish, it looks like you're climbing all the way till about mile 7-ish. And then, but it's kind of rolling and downhill, but it's really hard to look at these things and
so
look
to
at
give
these
you
profiles.
When it climbs, I mean, I'm looking at it zoomed in on mine. It's basically about mile 3.4 to 6.2 is the biggest portion. And it is a 2.8 mile climb with an average of 10%. So it's 1,500 feet in just under 3 miles. And that's that's pretty legit. And then once you get up there, there's a couple, you think you're done and you descend and then have to like go back up a couple sections because it drops off the backside of that.
For
But,
sure.
you know, it's kind of one of those things is I did it on a big trail bike, like a 30 something pound, 150 mil travel bike the first time, which wasn't the best choice of bike. And
Yeah.
it wasn't out of the norm to, suffer a little bit, but it's one of those things, once it's behind you, the stuff you get to ride later in the day and the experience, I kind of forgot about it. So, you're going to be climbing for an hour plus or minus, and it's just going to be what it is. But it's awesome because of the start finish being the same spot down by the river in a great location. And what you get to see later is going to be awesome crossing that gorge. So
No, yeah, that's going to be insane. And so that being said, too, because like I don't even know the answer to this, but you will. Can you pre-ride this right now? Probably not because of the bridge, right? I just want to make sure that anybody listening to this podcast, they don't go out and try to load this in and get stuck.
Yeah, the only way you can pre-ride stage 2 is in sections. Since it starts at Centennial Park right downtown of Canyon City, the way I'd recommend you pre-ride it, and I think you should, maybe you do ignorance is bliss and don't pre-ride that first climb. It's going to be what it's going to be. It's kind of survival. But if you want to do sections, you could ride out from there and do the first, 6.5, 7 miles up to the first aid station where it'll be at the top of the climb, and then drop back down. It's going to be, that's a couple hours of riding. And then from the end, you could ride out Temple Canyon Road, which is just a road that parallels the final single track out to the last aid station, or farther out on the private road if you want, and come inbound on what's considered Temple Canyon and South Canyon trails, and you get to see those. If you want to see the gorge itself, obviously that's a little bit bigger if you ride from the start, but you could ride all the way to the gorge and do those loops and then come back. But that's a pretty big day. But you could split it up in 3 different rides, or just do the first and last section. And that's what I shared earlier this week on an Instagram live on the Apex thing. So you can go and check that out.
And I think they also have you with like pre-ride details in a video that they can check out when you go to that website that I was saying before, the Pikes Peak APEX.com, and just click on, and I think it's probably got a backslash. Yeah, it's /stages. And so you can check that out. And then all these descriptions will be down in the link in the description below as well. So like you can click on these, see all these individually, and kind of how it would work. And it even gives you a place of where to park. And so Bryan, nutrition, it's going to be important, man. And Canyon City does tend to be probably a little warmer, and they got, let's check the schedule. They don't have the time set up yet, but I'm assuming it's going to be pretty warm. What's your plan for hydration and all that good stuff? So riders are off here. Actually, I got that. Riders. Yeah. So riders are off at 9 a.m. First riders are approximately around noon. And so what's your plans for nutrition? Or do you have one yet?
Yeah.
You need to talk to coach.
No, I do. I just wrapped up the Breck Epic and had a good experience, and actually ate and drank better than I ever had. So, I'm going to be feeling, a lot, the night before, the morning of. I'm actually planning on camping after the time trial, heading up to Canyon City and camping out there in my van. But just heavy carbs. A lot of nutrition on the bike. I'll go through that day probably 6 or 7 water bottles. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a hydration pack. I'm kind of going back and forth on that. I'm going to practice a little bit with that tomorrow, actually, and figure out the best strategy there. But I tell you, I'm learning how to eat on the bike, and
yeah, it's a hard one, man.
It's pretty well to it, but it's a hard one.
Yeah, and like you almost have to train your gut, Matheny. Wouldn't you say? Like, you have to train a little bit to like take on some of these carbs, especially for some of these races you guys are doing, like in the amount of time you're spending out there. And so, how are you working with athletes? Bryan being one of them. How are you working with them on training for fueling on the bike?
Yeah, just like he said, we were pushing it for Breck Epic and stuff like that because we also did like Silver Rush 50, and obviously one of the things I learned from one of my mentors, like Dean Gullitch, used to say, like, fats burn in a carbohydrate plane. So these endurance events, they're definitely aerobic, but if you downregulate too much carb metabolism, you're just going to have to go so slow that it's not going to get you through that day. So you got to, it's just like training. You got to train up your ability to handle that carbohydrate. I know, Brian's a pretty healthy general person, which I think is good, as far as like not always just eating the junkiest stuff. So it's like we've had to work a little bit on that because of he's normally like somewhat fasting in the morning and, does some bulletproof coffees and things like that. So sometimes it's been getting his tolerance up so he can have that metabolic flexibility to handle the carb. Because if we just say, oh, it's all the rave to take in 100 grams an hour, it's like he's going to be sick. And I've seen some athletes do that, like not tell me what they're going to try, and they do it and then they get gut rot because they're not.
You got to love that. I've gotten it, man. I mean, Leadville was something I will never be able to explain and experience. I tried to do so I could be the biggest man to go under 9 hours, which isn't a medal, by the way. I think we should get.
I think it should be.
It should 100% be. I think I would challenge that I'm probably one of the biggest guys to go under 9 hours. But that being said, just so you guys know, but that being said, I almost died because of the amount of carbohydrates I tried to take in per hour because I did the math. And when I started doing the math, I was like, my track training hasn't been having me do that, but I ended up taking in like almost 900 grams of carbohydrate or something crazy.
Yeah. But insane. That's a thing with, I've coached some big guys before too. And the same thing, like you just have a gut tolerance to output problem because like, small people aren't producing as much power and as many kilojoules of work. And so you just have a hard time fueling the work demand. So,
yeah, well, Canyon City, we're excited about that one. That one looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, it's going to be gorgeous.
Brian, I've got a question for you. So one of the things we've been trying to get this together for so long, obviously it started whenever we did our Apex camp and our endurance camp back in June. And Brian came along for that as well as some other people. But what was one of your favorite parts of that course down there doing Canyon City pre-ride?
Yeah, I tell you, being a big fan of the Royal Gorge area in general, and having taken my family there for the Via Ferrata course, and just enjoying the zip line across the canyon. I mean, I know we talk a lot about people traveling in for this event and looking for things to do with your family. Spending a day up there is a really special day. There's so many cool things to do. But getting to ride, just to your point, Daniel, I forgot about the pain and suffering of that early climbing. When we went across the bridge, did another little climb up, and then had just an absolute blast on the new trails back down to town. I mean, it was no time before you forgot about the up, and it was an absolutely blast. Just to ride across that bridge on a bicycle was crazy, and then getting to all the fun downhill single track was just a blast on the other side. So I'm really looking forward to that stage.
Yeah, and that's one thing. This is new intel too, because Mike and I just went down there yesterday and recon some of it. The community is so welcoming. They're building new single track along the edge of Temple Canyon Road, and literally we were out there with the trail building machinery. Snuck up on him a little bit and scared him because we were trying to knock on his window, but he was like, "Oh yeah, you guys can ride this new section." And because we're coming, they're trying to finish about 6 miles of new single track, and we rode about 3 of it the other day. That is just new bench cut that uses old trestles from where they were building railroad grades and stuff in the day. So a section that's not on our map currently is, literally could be 3 to 6 miles of new single track coming into town on that. And the end of it is very, like the first question you asked, John, about what's it like. The end of it is actually kind of Moab Grand Junction-esque. There's some rock rolls and fun features and stuff like that at the end where you can't really see. Not necessarily can you not see the line, it's just there's open lines where you're kind of going down sandstone and stuff. So people are really going to have a fun finish, I think. And there's a trail called Mutton Bustin' that's kind of a flow trail. That's the last thing you do before the finish, and that's a really good way to end it. So yeah, I think we're on a score for a good Friday stage. So
yeah, I have a feeling this is going to be next year's favorite stage. When I do the podcast, I ask everybody what their favorite stage is, and I have a feeling this is probably going to be it. But I know it's just stage 2, and that brings us into stage 3, which is, the classic staple, Rampart. I mean, Rampart Reservoir is, if you're from Colorado Springs, it's just about as famous as a Jones Park. It's just about as famous as a you know, any like a Mount Buckhorn stage or any Captain's Jack, because it's just like, I mean, even if you ride gravel, like Rampart has something for you. And then going into the reservoir is something gorgeous. So tell us a little bit about, you know, the 30-mile stage for the people who've already done it, but as well as for the people who haven't done it yet. What can we expect, Matheny?
Yeah. This one was a little bit of a, because of the change of stages and everything a little bit, you know, we've been trying to take feedback from everybody, and not like the first year Rampart up and doing that was, people were like, oh, that's brutal, like climbing Rampart Range and then getting there and doing it. And then the next year doing Monument to there. But we were trying to bring that in, like Rampart Reservoir, going all the way around the reservoir, and that like 14-mile single track is so fun, but it's hard to access. So taking the stage and starting it up in Woodland Park was a goal. And because of the day traveling down to Canyon City, we wanted to shorten things up a little bit. So that allows us to start higher elevation and have a less front loaded big climb, but a little bit more fun. So, you know, we use some of the similar gravel roads that we used last year to access between Lovell Gulch and Rampart Reservoir, and then kind of connect some lesser known Forest Service moto trails, which are kind of feels like you're in the middle of nowhere, almost like out in Winter Park. You drop into these single track trails that not many people use. There is a pretty steep climb out of each end of it, but the middle section is just awesome, just to get over to Rampart Reservoir and do that. And then you just get a very dynamic in and out of the kind of contour of the reservoir itself. So you're just in and out of these bays and inlets and stuff like that. Makes it super fun. So I think that 30 miles, you know, is going to be a really fun 30 miles for the course, and appreciated to shorten things up a little bit from our previous long stages with a little less climbing and a little less load. And Lovell Gulch to start and finish, that's a fun way to start and finish the day too.
Well, Woodland Park too is just like a cool area. Like that's a cool place to end. It's just like it, and it kind of gives you like wouldn't you say like the Apex kind of this year, and you know, maybe I get canceled for this, but I'm saying, wouldn't you say the Apex this year is like a little bit of like what we get to see in Colorado Springs when we don't want to hang out in Colorado Springs? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, we love going to Woodland Park. You know, you go have Mexican food up in Woodland Park. You go to Canyon City to go ride Phantom Canyon and all these other kind of cool places. It's like, and even in Monument, you know, like there's these like little towns that we hit on our way out. And then, so I think it's like, not only do we get to showcase Colorado Springs a bit, but we also get to showcase these other cool little towns that are around. And it kind of brings it into the Pikes Peak region, and it makes it more of that Pikes Peak Apex.
Yeah. It's diverse, and that's the thing. Like originally, whenever I was like, I don't know about the Canyon City, or I don't know about, because I was thinking of running stuff from here in Colorado Springs, but it's not the Colorado Springs Apex, you know. And when we went to Canyon City from the top of Fremont Peak, you get to see Pikes Peak from the south, and it's amazing. When you go to Woodland Park, there's nothing like the view. I feel like the view from Rampart Range and Rampart Reservoir is like the most ever-changing view of the north side of the peak. Depending on where you're at, it's like, you know, huge, and sometimes it changes. So it's like we're basically kind of navigating all the way around, from being on the foothills of it on like stage 4 to being all the way around it the other days. So it's very cool to kind of offer that from all the different perspectives of the soil surfaces and terrain, because every day is different.
Yeah, and so coming off of stage 3, it brings us into the finale, which is also another staple of Colorado Springs for road riders, gravel riders, and mountain bikers alike. It is Cheyenne Canyon. And literally everybody has their own different way of Cheyenne Canyon and riding Cheyenne Canyon, whether it's on the road, whether it's going up the Columbine, like doing all these different trails. You know, what do we have to look forward to in this final stage?
Lots of things, actually. So the course has changed for the final day. And it's for a lot of the reasons, like this is part of the Pikes Peak Stewardship Fund, because this is an event that gives back. So every year we've given, you know, thousands of dollars back into the trails that help put up signage. And part of the money that went last year was to finish some of the trails in Sweetwater Canyon. And so we're actually able to utilize some of the trails that were finished, and the money went towards that in the previous year. So those trails opened up last fall. So instead of doing the same loops we did last year, we're going to cross over Cheyenne Canyon Road and hit up the section of Daniels Pass, Sweetwater, Bruin Trail that were all finished last fall. So we get to change things up a little bit and actually showcase the trails where the money has went back into. And that's, that's a new fun trail system that all the locals have, embraced in the process. But we still get to tie back in the notorious, Captain Jack's finish and things like that, because, who doesn't want to punch the ticket and get to descend that at the end of the day and ride the whoops. So
it is one that you can't leave out. And honestly, Bryan, what, now that we've kind of talked about all four of these stages, like, we got a lot of new, I would say. This is a lot of new. Like everything kind of has like a little bit of a new flair, probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, but probably except the time trial. Like the time trial is probably the same as it has been in previous years. But what are you looking most forward to? Which stage?
I tell you, having done the endurance camp, which was a big help for me, and getting to kind of experiment. I mean, Daniel and Mike are getting our feedback on the days that we're hitting a lot of sections and debating, how should we finish? Should we go here or there? The finish of the Rampart Day is going to be an absolute blast. Back down through Lowell Gulch is going to be. I mean, I did this on. I remember being on Mike Durner's wheel on that day, just trying to stay with him and just flying down through those aspens. It was an absolute blast. And then just the time, as Daniel said, getting all the different views and perspectives of Pikes Peak was really cool. Being somebody who's really relatively new to the area, all the stages are going to be unique. But finishing up with that wonderful climb up High Drive on the backside of High Drive, that'll get you nice and awake for that final stage, and then getting to do Buckhorn and the new trails in Daniels Pass and Captain Jack's. The last stage is going to be, I think, just so much fun and just a great way to cap it off and have a great race.
No, yeah, that's exciting. And so that also being said, Matheny, what's, I mean, dude, you're the trail whisperer. You were involved in all of this. Which stage are you most excited about?
I'm excited about Canyon City, honestly, because of how cool it's a big loop. And that's what I like. I mean, I've experienced a lot of mountain bike racing, and like I said, a kind of a course director for the rider is like, I'm constantly pushing to see, can we add more trail? Can we get more, more accessibility, more connectivity, that kind of stuff. And even before I was full on with this, that's one thing I expressed to Michael, was like, if we can get more cohesiveness with our outdoor recreation and all the trail network and stuff here, then that's what it is. I mean, you can't go wrong with Palmer. Like, maybe it's because I like technical riding, and so I've always done well in Palmer. It hurts, but it's one of those things, so I can't really shy away from that. But every one of them has something different. I mean, that's the sandstone punchiness of being a short distance racer versus, like Bryan said, the high altitude nature of Rampart Reservoir, how often you get to ride around a reservoir at that altitude in the aspen trees, that kind of stuff, versus the deserty, rocky stuff of Canyon City. That's something totally different. And then, riding in the canyon, it's a totally different thing. So it's hard to put my finger on one of them because they're all just so good. But it's like, the thing I'm trying to showcase is just how good the mountain biking can be in this area and stuff like that. And just build this race for the general rider experience. Like, the pros will show up and do it. There's a prize purse and all that stuff, but it's built for the participant, so they get the best experience. So,
no, and I think that's what's cool about this event, and as well as like, I think it's also like it's also built for the community. Like, I think these different towns get to experience a little bit about what gets us excited about riding bikes, and I think that's what's really cool about this event. Bryan, now that we kind of have an idea of what to expect, we kind of have an idea of what these stages are going to look like, and if you didn't get it from this podcast, make sure you go down to the description below and check out the Apex links that we were talking about earlier, so you can go check out the different courses. But now that we have all this information, what bike will we see you choosing to ride for this event? Matheny made the comment about his big, suspension bike, trail bike that he decided to ride in Canyon City wasn't the best option. So what do you think the best option is going forward?
Well, the best option is going to be my only option, which is my my 12110 Epic Evo that I got in the fall.
Sweet bike.
Nice upgrade from my Stumpy last year. But yeah, I'm just kind of really learning how to ride it, to be perfectly honest, and enjoying the climbing, learning how to descend on it. But yeah, I cannot wait to knock it around over those trails. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
No, I had one of those
I
bikes.
think isn't that the same bike or the recommendation of what Russell's last podcast he said? He's like, bring your suspension bike, bring your big tires, run low air pressure. So
yeah,
I think we're on the thing here. So
yeah, he's all about the scree, man. He's, you know, and sliding around. And if you didn't hear already, make sure you go back to that podcast. But, you know, Colorado has this, like, I called it kitty litter. I've never heard of scree. I tried to Google it. I don't know if I spelled it right. Is that an actual word? Scree?
it is.
What is it?
Yeah,
like,
it's SCREE, and so it's actually like small loose stones that cover a mountain slope.
So it's actually like, better than me saying kitty litter. So like it actually is like the actual term that should be used instead of me saying. So yeah,
and I always joke because it's like, you know, the conditions, I call it screero dirt because we never get dirt, but it's like whenever it rains or like outside right now, it's like if there's any moisture on the terrain, that's when you want to go ride the scree because it's the only time it somewhat holds together.
Yeah, and so that's probably your saying. So Matheny, you've pretty much answered my next question. So that's pretty much your choice then, like on the bike. It's probably in that full suspension range, 120 to 100 ish, kind of travel. You know, lower tire pressure, wide tires, that kind of thing for grip.
I think it depends. Like I like to individualize everything because the thing is, like if you take somebody like me or say Russell can ride the stuff out there on a hardtail 80 mil, 100 mil travel and make it look like he's on a trail bike, and he will scream past some of your enduro bros in spandex, make them look like they're sitting still because he's that good. But I would say for the riders that are, say, you know, more technically savvy, they don't have to go as big and can get away with it because there is, you know, there's going to be some climbing, and so you'll see that there'll be some guys that are riding, you know, XC whips, but they're going to be, you know, more technically savvy. But if you need a little bit more of that cushion, I guess, and confidence, then yeah, you're not gonna regret running a little bit more of a bike or tire. I would say one thing is like flat tires aren't fast, and we've got a lot of bony exposed rock and things like that when it's hard to stop on like the scree because it kind of shifts underneath you. It's like a magic carpet ride. So having a little bit more tire pressure is going to help. So that's what I would say. Like if you're on the, you know, more fitness than skill, then maybe you want to run a little bit more aggressive of your setup. And if you have pretty good skill and maybe not as much fitness, then you may want to tone down your bike and match it up accordingly. So
no, that's perfect. And that's good feedback. And so we also talked about this a little bit earlier about the pack. You know, we don't know if we're going to run a pack. And so Bryan, we were talking about Canyon City specifically, but is there any other stage that, hey, you know, maybe I do need to run a pack, or, you know, I know you have a nutrition plan because you planned it with Breck Epic, but do you have any thoughts on that?
You know, I think Canyon City is the one that I'm thinking most about needing that. I think the other two stages, I'll probably be fine just with bottles and the feed zones. But I'm actually the next 2 or 3 weekends, I'm going to be doing some longer rides and hitting some of these stages, and you know, going to be doing some experimenting myself. But that's my strategy as we sit today, but that could change.
So Matheny, you know, not even more or less a Bryan feedback, but what would be your feedback to the casual athlete that's coming to the event, and they have the pack question, like what should they bring? You know, should they do water in their pack? I see, you know, on the website there is stops for aid stations, but what's your feedback on that?
Yeah, we try to set up aid stations based on the ability so people can choose their best option. And I'd say that's one of the things, you know, when I build out race plans for people, it's very specific to, like, say, their speed, their expected speed and what they want. Because, like, you know, if you're going to be going faster, then obviously you can get between those aid stations quicker. So you can probably get away with, you know, less preparation. But I would say it also depends on how technical you perceive as a rider the course is. Because if you think I'm going to carry bottles and I'm going to drink them, but it's technical enough to where you don't want to take your hands off the bars, then you're probably better off running a pack, because then you can just grab the hose and drink. So
Yeah.
I do that quite a bit on certain sections, like say, between aid stations sometimes, especially for events, maybe not like Apex, but other ones where you can, like Leadville or Breck, where you can throw off and pick up different things of your own bag. But for this one, it may be something where, Canyon City, you may want to use a pack because, yeah, you're going to be maybe harder to get your hands to the bottle on that first climb, and you're going to drink more. And then it's more technical, so you would want to carry a pack versus, like, say, the Woodland Park stage, maybe you don't want to wear it or something like that. Obviously, like the prologue, it's short, but you don't want to put yourself in a deficit for the rest of the week. So I would say it's personal rider preference a little bit as far as how comfortable you are of grabbing a bottle versus picking up the hose to drink out of.
No, that's good feedback. And so, now that we're like kind of wrapping up, Brian, what's I guess one thing that you would give, and we kind of had this conversation a little bit in our podcast when we did it, but what's some, now that you've like kind of ridden the course a little bit, what's some feedback that you would give somebody new coming to the Apex? Like what's a suggestion and something that, hey, don't go without this?
Well, I tell you, what I would recommend is don't come into this thing, overtrained. Come in, err on the side of a lot of rest leading into a 4-day stage race. And I think being a little flat at the beginning is a better strategy if you have to have a strategy, as opposed to being overtrained, because that's what I tend to do. And that's the thing that Daniel's helped me most with, having just been through Breck Epic and surviving that and actually feeling pretty good on the last day. I'm learning a lot about just rest and not being cooked when you head into it. You're excited, you're eager, you want to be, you want to be strong, but that's a dangerous game to play if you're overtrained walking into this 4 days.
No, that's good advice. I mean, it's not a math test, guys. Don't come in trying to cram all your training in the day before. You'd probably just do better. Sleep. But Matheny, what's your kind of like, somebody wants to come to the Apex, they say you can only give them one tidbit of advice. What would that be?
I would say break it apart in palatable chunks. It's the way I kind of approach a lot of things, because you're going to ride waves of going up and down. However you feel now, it's going to change. If it's good, it's probably going to feel bad later. If it's bad, it's going to change to feeling good. So taking it and breaking it apart only helps you live in that moment and experience it. So it's like, okay, I'm on this climb, I'm going to get through it, and then something else. And it's the same thing, that helps you get through, like, say, little instances of the prologue, like Brian talked about, like the first climb, breaking it apart is that, like, I break the segments apart in, different climbs of the course or different segments. Do that for the first stage. Do that for the days themselves. Do that for segments within each day. And that way it forces you to be in the moment and present. And then that also helps you with, from the coaching aspect, obviously that's my main hat I wear, not course directing, but, then that also gives you the perspective of like taking inventory before you go into the aid station, to be really aware of like what I need right now to continue to ride well, or pick myself out of this hole kind of deal, because you'll have some crests and valleys that go on throughout the course of those days, as well as within an individual day. So be present.
No, I think that's great feedback. And honestly, like, I mean, that's some, that's stuff that I even deal with. I bet that's stuff that Russ deals with. I mean, we were talking about Leadville, and, Russ was like, we just got to get to St. Kevin's. We just got to get a Carter, you're literally like, just get to Twin Lakes, like it's those things where you just break it down and take your time with it. And then, once that, monster is tackled, go on to the next one. And then after that, it's now on to the next stage. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for your time. Brian, especially you, my guy. You're sitting in the airport right now, and I bet you're trying to go home. So thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. Daniel Matheny, thank you for taking your time out of your trail whispering ways to grace us with your presence and let us know what we have to expect, and then what we have to experience coming up here in September. And guys, if you haven't already, please make sure you go to the pikespeakapex.com to check out the new courses, as well as all the scheduling information that's going to be live on the website right now, as well as I'll put Matheny's Matheny's social media down in the description below. And so if you have any coaching questions or last minute thoughts, you want to bug somebody, bug him. Just shoot him tons of emails and tell him that you heard about it from this podcast. Say John told you to. But other than that,
if I ignore you because I got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, I'm not as active as I should be on social media. So,
but other than that, we'll see you next time, guys, and we hope to see you in September. Cheers.